I set up this little jig, if you will, just a piece of any kind of lumber. I clamped it here and here, and I measured 54 1/4. As you know, 27 1/8 to 27 1/8 is 54 1/4. So I got that measured out to that dimension. I stapled a couple of these on, either screw them, whatever. That'll help you set up. You come down and place that flat on here, here, and then you can check out how everything looks. Pick up your gusses. They don't have to be perfect or anything. And basically, this dimension here, they can be wider or narrower to your liking. I'm going to shoot them with a. What I have is 1 3/4 inch nails in this gun. One truss is done. Now, what I did on this one is I made a little jig, nothing more than a 2x3. That's 54 1/4 inches from end to end. And I put the top of this 2x3 right at 6 feet. This represents the soffit, and this represents the plywood. Remember the little assembly plywood piece on the soffit? You slide it in. And then I attached my gable end stud, a rafter or whatever, not stud, truss, rafters, right to the edge like I normally would once the sidewalls are in. I got the gable end peak marked out, and also the doors. I'm going to go with 30-inch doors. Kind of wide for this size shed, but I want to, whoever gets it, ends up with it, I want them to be able to put a snow blower, and most walk behind lawnmowers could go through this door. The height, I'm going all the way up to 6 feet. Right below that, eventually when gable walls are in place, I'll have a top plate going across here to tie that in. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I can move it out of the way and build the rear gable end wall. After I downloaded all my clips, I realized that I don't know if I made it very clear, so I'm going to clarify a couple things. Pretend this sheet, because I had to go get a leftover cut piece of Textile 111 to demonstrate this. Picture this sheet going on down, not cut here. And I don't know if you, in a previous video, saw how I had this little jig I screwed on temporarily just to put it in the position of where my sidewalls would end up and where my soffit would be positioned. And this black, if you can see it, represents the siding of the sidewalls coming up. So, you know, obviously this is going to come over and not come over and cover up the sidewall, because that sidewall siding expands the width of the shed by that amount on both sides. And then when you drop your soffit on to that, and this red piece here represents that piece of plywood or OSB that you pre-make up the soffit, and then this here I just screwed on. And what I was trying to indicate was that I did this kind of as an experiment, thinking that if I ever was going to make some more of these, it would be it would be sort of speed up the on-site time if I was going to sell them either as a kit or install them. If this rafter was put in position and nailed down, and this cut off, and then after you set all this up, get this in the right position, and you attach your first gable end truss or rafters and have them nailed in, Then this will come off, and you're just going to have this rafter sitting there in the air. Then after you cut this, what I did is after I went ahead and cut out, you know, of course, once you got your rafter in place, you know, you can snap a line where you know you got to trim off the excess siding. What you'll notice on mine is that I went ahead and attached my rake trim too, so that when the gable end goes up and fits you know, and it gets secured to the two side walls, the rake trim, the soffit, rafters, and truss, rake trim, everything will be attached, and basically all the upper trim would be more or less complete. If you were to pre-attach your rake trim, you don't have to, and you don't even have to pre-attach your rafter. You can put your siding on your two gable end walls and put all this on afterwards. But if you do, what you want to make sure is that you tie something across your upper walls. When you got your walls up, tie something across the upper, on the top plates to separate. Once you put your soffits on, put them on, get them nailed down, your soffit assemblies, and then from the outside edge to outside edge of your soffit, get that dimension established, 54¼ inches, and nail down some kind of a little tie. Keep it back just enough so your first rafter can go up. Now your walls are going to go like this. You're already secured at the bottom, but the tops are going to be a little flimsy, but at least they'll be 54¼ And now you can slap your full sheet of gable end plywood on, get your 2-inch overhang at the bottom, and square it off and nail it to your walls, and you're good to put the rafters up after the fact, and they'll all come out real nice. But I want to mention that this 72 is the height you want to, if you're going to do this little jig method to simulate your soffit and whatnot, and your T111 there, thickness, put this little, not this plywood, but this little, right where the top of this 2x3 ends up, put that at 72 inches, because you know your sidewalls, the T111 is 72, and also, I don't know if I messed up, but the door height ends up being 70½, because later on you might want to put a top plate across here. Over here, drew up this little, I hope you can see this. This is your sidewall, looking on the end of it. So you got your, in my case, I had 72 inches of T111 I want to use. And so with 2 inches of an overhang, got a bottom plate and a top plate, that adds up to 5 inches. Subtract 5 inches from 72, which is your T111 length, and that'll give you your stud length, 67 inches. So you could cut all your studs 67 inches, frame up your sidewalls, and when you put your T111 on, you'll have your 2-inch overhang. I hope that's somewhat clear. Up here you can see how the soffit, when it drops on, and you can see that 72 is right there underneath that plywood that you put on your soffit or OSB or whatever. It's pretty much straightforward, common sense and all that, but I'm just giving you, you know, like if you decide you want your sidewalls to be higher, how you can quickly determine all that. A lot of times my sidewalls, I'll build them at a height that will allow me to make the pitch I want and not go above the 8-foot level of the T111. Now on my wider sheds, a lot of times I do go higher. I want to get a higher wall, sidewall here, and to get a halfway decent pitch, I'm up above the 8-foot mark, but I just piece it in. I'll try to inject a photo of, I think a 10 by 12 I did. I'll show you how it came out, and also, well, I got interrupted there, but as I was saying, on my wider sheds, I'll go higher on my walls. Depending on the pitch, many times I don't want it too flat, so to give it a halfway decent pitch, I'll come above the 8 foot of the T111, and then I'll piece in a piece at the top with Z flashing or drip cap, whichever you want to call it. I'm going to try to put in a 10 by 12 photo of a 10 by 12 shed that actually I use the same process with the soffits and everything, and also to determine my length and angles of the soffit, rafters, and also I use the one difference is that on the bigger sheds I do the soffit pretty much all the same over here, but once my sheathing is on here, I'll put a 1x4 piece of pine on in here, and that gives it a wider profile for my fascia board coming down, just to look a little better. You wouldn't even have to do that, but you'll see on that shed it's got like a 1x4 pine fascia board. And if you do that, you don't have to change any of this. You just add that on. Your drip cap will cover it. I framed up both of the side walls. Went 2 foot on center on the studs. These are the soffit assemblies. I made up both of them. I used 1 3/4 inch nails, kind of zigzagging them down there to attach this OSB to it. The reason I went 1 3/4, 2 inch will just kind of pop through, and you'll have the tips of the nails sticking down here below the soffit when you get them on the shed. I'm going to attach the T111, which I already cut these panels, and I cut those to 6 foot. The framing itself comes down to measures from top to bottom 70 inches. So when I put the 6 foot siding on, I'll have 2 inch overhang like I mentioned before. I went ahead and pre-cut all the panels because I'm limited in space here. But you could put the panels on and cut off the extra 2 foot. If you notice here, I got a bunch of 2 foot pieces left over. The remainder of those faux sheets. So now I'm going to, I'll attach the pre-cut siding material that I have. This is the back side. And you can see behind that, you can see where I got my gable end panels pre-made with the, actually got the rake trim all attached and everything on those. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my T111 siding onto these sidewalls. I'm going to use my coil nailer, 2 inch nails, galvanized. If you hand nail this, make sure you get galvanized. 2 inch galvanized will work really good. What I do is I start on one corner to get it nice and flush, both surfaces, and pop a nail in there. Check and see how this runs down. You can just give it a little, I'll maybe put one midway, make sure it's flush, and then come down here, make sure it's nice and flush. Now as far as the squaring this up, don't worry about it. Your sheet itself will square itself up. So I'll come down here and run this nice and flush with the bottom plate. Now, once I do that, I check the skin stud. If it's got any bolt to it, I'll take it out. It don't have much. I'll just tap a little bit. And that straightens that out. At that point in time, you know you got it square. You can go ahead and put a nail down here. And that sheet can be finished nailed afterwards. I'll get the second sheet on, and then I'll shoot it all down, up and down the studs and everything. So I'm going to put the other sheet on, and when I do, you'll notice that this sheet here is 48 inches to there, and you got an extra 3/8. So the sheet width is actually more than 48. That allows the next sheet to overlap right here, and that'll close up and you won't have a gap. So you always want to start out with this side having the groove. I'll call it the, I don't know, groove, I guess. I'll call this the tongue, just for, you know, coming up with some kind of a terminology. Can't think of anything else at the moment. Now the next sheet will overlap this by half that amount. Now I'm sliding my other sheet in. You can see that this side here is the side that overlaps. So you drop that right on there. Got your nice little overlap. Square it up nice. So it's overlapped perfectly. Catch a nail right here. Don't worry about what's happening down there. Then, same thing. Just push and pull. You get your nice flush. All right, that's really nice right there, about halfway. Then I'll check it down here. Nice and flush. Now I got a nice straight run. Then, I don't want to nail nothing here because I want to be able to move this if I had to. See, that's pulled out. Bring that in. Nice and tight. I'll catch a nail right here. And now everything's locked in. I'll put one here if you want. And at that point in time, you pretty much have everything squared up and ready to shoot it off. But over here, because these sheets, you know, are wider than 48, you're going to have to trim off this part of the tongue. Right here, don't know if you can see it, but I got to trim that off. I'll just hit that with my skill saw. And when I put a nail in here before I shoot it up, I'll maybe put one in the middle, but I'll check my stud to make sure it's straight. Because if there's any bow, you can take it out at this point in time, and then you're good to go. Second side will be the same way. If you notice, right here I got my 2-inch overhang. That'll go down over the floor. I usually snap a line right down here for nailing into the bottom plate. I don't like to just guess, because if any of these nails end up coming out and missing the plate and end up down on this overhang, it'll mess you up when you're trying to scoot it into place, and you're going to have those nails interfere with it. That's about the only place you really need to snap a line. The top plate, of course, easy. These perimeter studs. And then when you nail this center stud, just remember that you got to, this is where this sheet overlaps this sheet. So you want to nail on this side, not this side. Just this side only, and that'll hold this side down. And when you do, it don't hurt to maybe angle it just a little bit that way. Not a lot, just a slight amount. And don't go too far over or you'll miss the stud. Remember, the stud kind of centers on that, so there's not a lot of stud left over on this edge of the sheet, but you won't have any problem. Once you put the wall up, if you notice you do have a nail that missed, you can pop it out and then go back in at an angle, either with a hand nail or whatever. And then when you do your, this is 2 foot on center up, next one will be here. Usually if I'm on to the left, I'll go to the left on every one of them. I have the walls stood up on the floor base. I put the gable in the back in place. You'll notice the soffit right there, this piece and right here is all in place. And this is a little add-on piece to take up the gap because of the T111 here. This is the front gable end. I got this down here just so I can lift it in place. Screwed in a couple screws. I don't worry about any screw holes. This is going to be covered with corner trim. This will have trim covering any holes I make. So let me put this front gable end in place. And you'll notice there's no framing on it in the back, other than that one truss that I pre-attached and the rake trim I pre-attached. This rafter edge right there, I just got to set it up there on top of the soffit, let it hang there. Now this wall is, you know, floating around, so I'll get that. If you notice here, the rafter sticking out of here, I want that to be perfectly, the tip of that rafter right to the edge of that OSB soffit assembly. And at that point, that's where I want this wall to be. So what I'll do is I'll just put a screw in there temporarily so that wall will stay in that position. Double check that little tip of that rafter there. Now if you'll notice, this is not squared up. See how far out that is? You know, I can do whatever I want here. Everything floats. So what I'll do is I'll take whatever I got here. This is the T111 that's making the walls expand the shed widthwise. So that's perfectly normal. So when I come down here, I'll bring that over to match that. Put a screw there for now. And that'll be lined up. So I'll bring that over. I'll catch that later. Now over here, this wall will still float around. I want to get this right to the edge of that and lock that in. So basically, once that's done, once this is lined up the same as over there, because this wall can float in and out, I'll double check it. Looks good. You know, you can be an eighth off here and there or whatever. It doesn't hurt nothing. Now over here, this is already going to be pretty much lined up because obviously I can't move the bottom of this wall back and forth. But when I attach that, and if that's correct, then this should come out, I don't know if you can see it or not, but that comes out really decent. I just put the rest of the trusses in place, and you know, once again, the tip of the truss or rafter right to the edge of that. Also, when you put your soffit up, make sure it's, you know, all the way in, because if you've got any kind of a bow, you can clamp it and bring that in tight before you nail down that soffit. And when you nail it down, you can just nail it down in here, and then you'll be done with that. Also, make sure the soffit assembly is evened up left to right so that you get the proper spacing here.